morning, everybody. It is Friday, the 19th of June, and welcome to our session of From the Pastor's Desk. So, this morning, as we continue, I think we need to just start off and just say to the Smith and to the Allen family that we are thinking about you guys over the loss of a family member and just really encouraging you and just praying for you during this time. And I think we need to just continue as a community, just reaching out to each other and just finding out how people in ourselves or just people in our community are doing as we're all going through so many things that we need to just really be loving each other during this time. We think about guys that have been in hospital recently that haven't been able to have loved ones with them. We're thinking about you and your families. And then obviously we know as well our president on Wednesday night gave a speech about the opening up of more sectors in the economy. And we need to continually be praying for our people in our church. There are many people that have been affected by this pandemic. Losses of job are becoming a reality, and people that are very, very stressed by that. And we're getting to that point now as well where it's no longer somebody that we may have heard of that has been infected with COVID-19, but it's getting to the point now where it's people that we know are going through it. And so let's continue to pray. Yes, we need to be praying for our president and leadership this time, but we need to be praying for each other during this time. Then just to bring it back to church and what's happening on a Sunday, you'll know we've been journeying through the book of 1 Timothy. This Sunday, and we come to our last session in 1 Timothy, and really encourage you now to start reading through that. And we would love to hear from you how the session in 1 Timothy has been for you, and maybe there's a lesson or something that you've learned from it. Feel free to pop us a message or to send an email to any of us, and we'll see what we can do with that. But then also, just Barry and myself were just chatting the other morning. It was on Thursday, yesterday, and just really saying, where do we go to from here? And Barry's really thinking about and wanting to maybe do the book of Judges. And so really encourage you, why don't you start reading through the book of Judges, even if it's just chapter 1 within the next week, to kind of see where we're going and start getting into the meat of what we are doing. And then looking at these sessions from the pastor's desk, we were also kind of just chatting again yesterday, saying, how do we take this and kind of give something that's of value to those of you that are watching? And we thank you so much for watching and joining us now at the moment every week. And so we thought, what better way to do it to go through a book? And so we want to go through the book of 1 Thessalonians, but get very, very practical and going, how does this apply to our lives where we are at the moment? And so we're going to be going through the book of 1 Thessalonians. And so I really encourage you, read it along with us as we do that. And so today I have the privilege of welcoming us into the book of 1 Thessalonians and see where we're going with this. And so there's two very specific thoughts from two very specific verses that I want to pick up this morning. So I'm not going to read the whole of the verse that we're looking at. Sorry, I got a bit tongue-tied there. But there's two verses that I want to pick up and kind of going, how do these apply to our daily lives? And so if you wanted to read along this week, I'd encourage you to read all of chapter 1 and see where it's going. So I was reading it yesterday and Thursday morning and just making notes everywhere we went. And there's so much to get out of even just this one chapter. And it's been encouraging for me just to see these new and fresh insights that we could be looking at this week. And so the first verse, very specifically, that I want to pick up this morning is chapter 1, verse 3. And it reads as follows. As we pray to our God and Father about you, we think about your faithful work, your loving deeds, and the enduring hope you have because of our Lord Jesus Christ. And so when we look at that, what an amazing verse to kind of start this letter of encouragement to the church in Thessalonica. And so we see here Paul uses three very dynamic phrases. He speaks about faithful works, loving deeds, enduring hopes. And we see that they come from each other. And so if you ever looked at something, Paul was very famous in doing what was known as a Pauline chiasm. So chiasm means an X. And so he would use that and he would link things together. And so when we look at it and we see faithful works, so yes, we know that we're not saved by works, we're saved by faith and by grace. But when we look at it, here now Paul is saying to them that the work comes because of our faith. And isn't that an amazing thought that the work that we do comes because of our faith? The same when we look at deeds or the labor or the getting into the nitty gritty, that comes because of the love that we have. I find that absolutely amazing that we look at that, yes, that works comes through faith, that this deeds, this labor comes through love. But then obviously he carries on just in that verse and he speaks about hope. And obviously he gets to this point where hope endures, and this enduring hope that they have. And this endurance comes out of this hope, and this hope about the return of Christ. And when we look very specifically in the context of 1 Thessalonians, that this hope is the coming of Christ, is a hope that has actually helped them endure persecution. And so don't you find that really fitting, that where we find ourselves at the moment in this persecution that we seem to find ourselves in because of lockdown, this being forced to be shut in, that we can actually have hope and we can endure because of that hope. And then even if we look at a place where people were being persecuted because of their faith, they endured because of that hope. And so that kind of, for me, kind of eggs me on and encourages me to continue enduring, to have this because of this hope that I have. But when we look at that, for me, I kind of, Paul uses quite a few verses then to get to the crux of the matter for me, specifically in verse 8. And I want to read that and kind of see what we can get out of verse 8. And now the word of the Lord is ringing out from you to people everywhere, even beyond Macedonia and Achaia. For wherever we go, we find people telling us about your faith in God. We don't need to tell them about it, for they keep talking about the wonderful welcome you gave us and how you turned away from idols to serve the living and true God. They speak about how you are looking forward to the coming of God's Son from heaven, Jesus, whom God raised from the dead. He is the one who rescued us from the terrors of this coming judgment. And so when you look at that word there, that first word that he uses, ringing out, that this faith, this good news that they've lived their lives is ringing out, it literally means has sounded out, that people have heard it, that it's almost like that ringing gong that people have heard. And in the context of their faith, this means that their faith was heard loudly throughout the entire region. Don't you find that amazing? That Paul and Silas and Timothy, they come to this church, and as they're traveling along the way, people are going, have you heard about that church in Thessalonica? Look what they're doing. There's this excitement about it because their faith is ringing out. Then this kind of brings to the second half, that how they don't need to continue sharing it. And there's two ways to interpret the second half of verse 8. And so the first way, so theologians have been divided over this for a while now, is that they're commending them for their vibrant faith, which was solid in the region, that people knew about their faith in the region. The second point that some people bring out is for the commending for the spreading of the gospel, to the extent that Paul and his team didn't need to share the gospel because the people had already heard it. And when I was looking at this and doing some research, I kind of came to the conclusion that most theologians prefer to agree to point one, but however, when we look at it, both can have said to be true. That here's this community, that their faith is so vibrant that it's actually a solid foundation in the whole area. That people in the whole area know and have heard the gospel because of the faith of this one church. And not only that, it's gotten to the point when somebody else comes in, that they don't even need to share their faith or share the gospel because the people have already heard it. And I find that really encouraging, and I find that really amazing. And so we see how the church in Thessalonica was doing it. And so for me, that kind of begs me to ask the question, how are we, not necessarily as a church as Westway Bethel, doing this, but how are we doing this personally? When we think about it, and so I was kind of thinking about it, what is the legacy that we're leaving behind? And so this may be a very grim thing to speak about at the moment, but when we think about eulogies at a funeral, people often get up and they say all the good things. But unfortunately, you get times where people don't get up because the legacy that has been left behind by a certain person is not a positive legacy. It's not a good legacy. And so we need to be asking ourselves the question, what are people saying about us? Is our faith turning people to the gospel, or is our lack of faith or the way that we're living out our faith actually turning people away from the gospel? And so, are we living out that lifestyle where, yes, we're doing works because of our faith, that we're getting down, doing the nitty gritty, doing the labor because we love people, and that we can endure because we've got this hope? What are people saying about us during, not only during this time of COVID-19, what are people saying about us before COVID-19? What are people going to say about us after COVID-19? And so as you gotten to know me now, I'm quite a practical person. And so the challenge that I want to leave to all of us today, and again, it may sound a bit doom and gloom, but if you were at your own funeral and you kind of got to watch people saying eulogies about you and they didn't know that you could see it, what would people be saying about you? Are there areas in your life where you kind of need to maybe think about what you've done or what you've said or how you're living or how you're treating people? Are you actively turning people to the gospel, or are you turning people away from the gospel? So hopefully this has been something for us to kind of think about, to chew on, and we look forward to hearing what Barry's going to be sharing with us next week from 1 Thessalonians as well. So have an awesome weekend. We look forward to seeing you on Sunday, and God bless.